Welcome to Norse Talk, Information of the Gods. I am Red Bearded Viking. This is Red Dranger. And guys, welcome once again into the new year of 2022. It's been an amazing end of the last year and a good beginning of this year. We have a lot of great things happening this year um, in not only Norse Talk, but the Norse community. Coming up on the 19th of January, we're going to be having a Zoom call to interview with the author, Patricia Lafayllve, of this book on the 19th of January. So that's amazing. We're also going to be towards the end of January starting on our next book, A Practical Heathen's Guide to the or that's the book we're on. we're we're going to be starting the study Havamal. Wow, I screwed that one up.
That was awesome. Yeah, we'll be moving into the study Havamal. Guys, we're almost at the end of this one. Um, this was our first book. There's so many faces in here right now that have been with us since we started this book. This has been an amazing adventure for both of us. We're so excited to be getting into these last few chapters. Last Monday's episode was one of my favorites that we've done so far, by far. Randy, I want to thank you for the awesome debate and conversation that we got into. Same with everybody that was in the comments. Uh,
Yeah,
I feel,
I think chapter 12 has probably been one of my favorite chapters so far this book.
yeah,
And we did talk about how chapter 11 seemed a little dry, but after reading chapter 12, it really made you understand what the purpose of chapter 11 was because it really
yeah,
sets you up for chapter
e-
12.
e- exactly. Going back now, it really feels like chapter 11 really wanted to put you in that position to walk into chapter 12. It was very deliberate, which was really well thought out by the author. And now looking back, I very much appreciate that we again got that reminder to look at the way we're viewing the world and the theory that she was about to start talking about before she started talking about it again, because it is so easy to get lost in your own lens and the modern lens that you won't pull the stuff out that you want to. And she's done a really great job of making sure that when she sees the potential for that in her writing, she puts something in front of it to make sure that you recenter and you refocus before you wade into it. And that's
Yeah, I've been really happy with. I guess the dog's a little happy too. I've been really happy with the setup of this book so far. Going in,
Loki has arrived at Norse Talk, my friends. I told you this was going to be that kind of night.
as I was saying. See, now this really after reading the chapter that we are doing tonight, just when something like that happens, just part of what we read in this chapter just sets you up for that right there. Just going with it, letting it happen, and not
Yeah,
like just throwing everything off, but just rolling with it.
just
No,
rolling with it.
she's
Yeah,
done an
it's
amazing job in this book, though. I've been really happy with everything that I've learned from this book, and I've learned a lot,
yeah,
and I've gained a lot of new views on a lot of things, which is
yeah.
really amazing.
That leads
And
us into this chapter, and again, guys, we'll kind of speak to the fact that going on in this book, it is very much instructional on how to go about stumbles and blots. We have gone over that in previous episodes, so I don't really want to tear over the basics of that again. But we do have to be careful about what we're reading from this point. Um,
right.
blots and
Yeah,
stumbles are
because we'll read a
powerful
few of the
events.
things just as reminders to get you guys
Yeah,
back in the mindset from the previous chapters as we're going through this. But like I said, like these next three chapters are going to be a lot of instructions on how to do certain things, and those are just things that we are not going to get into online because they can have some ill effects and everything. Plus, we would have to read them verbatim, and you can run into some trouble with doing that because these books are copyrighted. So we just got to be really careful with some of the stuff. that we do read and just cover it the best we can. But as we're going to do, we encourage you guys to go over and take notes on those blots and stuff. Learn different ways of doing it if you're not doing it that way, or if you have your own way, add some stuff to it, take some stuff away, whatever you got to do. But it's especially nice for the newer people that really have no idea how to do those type of things yet, because without the books, unless you have people that you're in close contact with that you can talk about those things to learn them, you really got to read and do your homework to find out how to do it. So I love that she lays that portion of it out in the book for the newcomers.
Absolutely. This to anybody that's just starting on the path right now. Um, this is the exact reason why all the books that I got when I first started, this is still the one that I like to go back to. The way that the author goes through describing how to go about certain acts and procedures for symbols, for offerings, and such like that, if you're learning on your own, is it's almost invaluable. There's not a lot of really thorough literature, not just on describing the actions in doing the symbol or the blot or the offering, but the mindset and the worldview that takes you into doing it. Um, so that being said, like I said in the pre-show today, it was a day and a half ago where I had again gone back to this book because a community member had jumped in while I was live and said that she needed some help. She wanted to make an offering and pay respect to an ancestor. Um, and we went through it, and it was in here, and it helped, and it helped ease her a little bit. And that's what this stuff is for, and that's the important part. So please, guys, do take the time to go over the different blots and samples that are in this chapter. They are extremely valuable. They're just not something that we're going to be getting into detail in online. It's not doable.
Right. And honestly, like I've loved the aspect of us discussing the chapters with each other after we've read them, because I've gotten so much more out of only taking it chapter by chapter and kind of analyzing the chapter to talk about it.
Yeah,
And then when I'm talking about it, hearing what other people got from it and the things that maybe I missed or you missed, we get different aspects on things and everything. And it just, I think it gives you so much more knowledge to after each chapter than you would have if you were just sitting down doing this by yourself.
yeah, exactly. It for me, I find that if I'm reading something by myself and I'm trying to get through it, that the reading itself almost becomes a tunnel vision. You are focused on making your way through the pages, that you're reading the words, but your brain kind of starts turning off that switch that starts retaining a lot of, like, you still retain some, but it tunes out a lot of the little stuff that you would catch if you were paying attention. Um, if you were paying attention to what you read six sentences ago, you might pull something completely out of what the author has just offered you now. And us coming in here and doing it together has given us all that ability because we all catch those little things and pull them together, and it builds a more complete picture for everybody. And it's just a great way to learn.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's been amazing. It's been an amazing journey thus far, since we started this book, you guys. And I'm definitely looking forward to the future and getting into these other books as well. Um, it's just been an eye opener. It really has, and it's been so much fun doing it with everybody. Because I mean, like Red was saying, I mean, when you're sitting down and you're reading something by yourself, a lot of times because I do a lot of reading, and I'll be like, okay, I'm going to read 3 chapters tonight, but I'm reading it as a story instead of reading it as an informational tool. Um, so it's like when I read 3 chapters that way, yeah, it's fun because I'm really into the world of whatever the book I am in is. But it's like with this, I like taking that aspect of it's not just a story, but it's also a study book, you know. It's something to learn from and gain knowledge from, and it's something to be studied, not just read.
Exactly.
And that's where we'll start tonight with chapter 13, you guys. Heathen rituals and heathens' ways. Right at the top, it says, Hail the gods, hail the Lafayllve, hail the ancestors. And that's where we get into the rituals and the ways, you guys. This chapter talks, like we were saying, a lot about the blots and symbols, um, and just talking about the exchanging of the gifts in the form of offering, the way are ways to for long-term relationships with not only the gods but your ancestors and your Lafayllves as well, and your weights and everything. Um, it's all about, a lot of it is about the rituals for different ceremonies or for worship.
Yeah. We talked about blots and samples in previous chapters. What they are is basically ways to make an offering and or pay respect as a group or as a person. And what those can be made to, they can be made to the ancestors, they can be made to the land elves, they can be made to the gods, they can be made to the fates, the Norns. There's people make samples and offerings to all kinds of different deities and entities within Norse paganism. Um, this chapter does do a really great job at going over different options for different situations because they are different. The way you're going to go about making an offering or performing a ceremony to the ancestors is probably going to be very different than the way that you do it to a deity that you worship. If you're a Thor worshiper, what you're making an offering to Thor and what you are actually offering is most likely going to be very different than what you're offering to your ancestors or that you're offering to a spirit to protect your home. Um, that's where I see a lot of people get really confused is you don't see a lot of modern heathens making offerings to the elves, to the ancestors, to that kind of stuff anymore because there's not a lot of good places to go to get the proper information on how to do that. This chapter is really good at really kind of laying that out for you. Um, most of the information that you'll find readily available is making offers to deities, and usually that's just very specific ones. So this chapter is again invaluable to anybody that is thinking about making an offering to a land spirit, is thinking about bringing a spirit into their home as a protector or a family ancestor or a new deity. Um, it's invaluable.
Yeah, 100%. And um, like, one thing to remember when we're talking about this stuff, guys, is she did cover blots and stuff previously, more in the defining aspect. Later on in this chapter, it actually goes over how to do them. But so we're just kind of because it's going to teach you some ways of doing things. It's re-bringing it up to refresh it in your mind before getting into it. And that's where, because we've talked about the blots, and then you got the symbols, which are we go back to the numbers of three in the symbols, when we're talking about, because you see threes in Norse all over the place. It's just one of the numbers in Norse: 3, 6, 9, 12, and etc. You know, and it talks about the toasting, um, how the first ones go to the gods and goddesses. The second toast is our ancestors and deceased heroes, and then the third round tends to be the open round where everybody tells stories or they sing songs, or um, they'll do riddles and stuff, or not riddles but poems and everything like that. And it's just, I like how she points out, because of the drinking that comes into play with things like that, people feel that heathens are naturally drunks. She talked about in there. When what people don't realize is it's actually an insult to get drunk at one of these things. and most people actually just take sips, not full horns, when they're doing these things. So that's one thing to remember is, yeah, there may be a lot of drinking involved, but it's also shunned upon if you get drunk during one of these symbols or blots or anything like that.
Yeah, the ability to not be able to maintain or protect or keep yourself was seen as something not to be honored. So there are a lot of stereotypes, and there are a lot people from an outside looking in modernly look at heathenry and look at pop culture, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, and they see some of the more extreme and or rare types of events that are documented in pop culture when it comes to symbols, rituals, that kind of performances. And the outside world looks in and sees that modern heathens and kind of has this expectation that that's still what it's all about. Um, that's why the author did such a great job in describing the ethics code in the previous chapter, which was why that chapter was so amazing. It's not something that somebody on the path brand new would automatically think about. You're not going to think about what are the codes of ethics, what are the codes that bind me in this world. That natural bias that exists in 99.9% of us because of where we've grown up with monotheism all around us, we all have in some way or another it ingrained in our heads that there is a specific set of rules, there is a specific set of ways to do things, and those ways are very much based on that monolithic style. When you weed into the heathenry, it's always almost entirely viewed with that lens. It's people that look at those events and they dramatize them. The drinking becomes being drunk. It becomes extreme. It's taken to that entertainment point, and it's not factual. And the ethics and way of life and sociological way that these people live together is something that people could spend entire lifetimes studying just to dig to the bottom of it. And it's
Right. And I think a lot of where the whole aspect of um, it being seen as a bunch of drunkards and everything and people getting drunk is because of what people view on TV. Which, when they show a feast on any kind of platform, TV, whatever, and they're doing a feast, usually that's when they've come home from a battle. So of course they're celebrating like way too hard. It's like winning the Super Bowl. It's like it's not every time that they feast. It's not every time that they gather. It's like times like that. Yeah, there's times that it happens, but usually there's a reason behind it. It's not a norm. But
exactly.
people just tend to think that because that's all they ever see when they see it on TV.
Yeah.
And then we start getting into, so after we get done with the stumble, tongue tied tonight. Wow. Um, then it starts talking about the feast with the hustle, which is a word for feast. Um, and so it shows how with the feast part, so there comes your threes again because you got the blot, and then goes the hustle, and then the stumble at the end. So like that's the whole way that it's performed for the gathering. And they do the same for like the different rituals for marriage and the naming of infants, man and women making ceremonies, funerals, and everything like that as well. So these are all incorporated in what she's talking about right here.
Yeah, she did an amazing job at tying everything in. Um, every time I reread this kind of stuff, I always find a little bit of something new that I didn't realize would affect the intent and the way that you would perform some of this. Like when we all start the path and we all do our first symbol or our first offering, the act of doing it almost kind of completely takes over. You're a little bit nervous about wanting to do it right. You're wanting to make sure that you have the right stuff and that you're saying the right words. When you stop and look at it, every time you go over this information, the author describes the state of mind and how people, again, how they were living their lives and how this was incorporated into it. It wasn't a stop. It wasn't something happened, so I need to go do this. It wasn't I need to make an offering always just because something happened or because it was a special date or a special event. This stuff was incorporated into the day-to-day life. It was that event that could be as commonplace as we get up to put our clothes on. You know what I mean? It was part of what they were doing throughout the day. If you were in the kitchen and you were preparing your meal, you were going to make sure that something was put aside. You were going to make sure that part of your drink was set aside. It was integral. And it's really, really interesting how you can start developing that in yourself when you do start taking those little steps and practicing this stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And like, you know, one of the biggest things that I've taken from uh, learning as we go is like when you are doing um, the certain ceremonies or blots, or you're doing an offering or whatever, it's not so much the way that you do it, it's that when you're doing it, the intent that you're putting into what you're doing. So it's like you
Absolutely.
can't do it wrong as long as the intent behind what you were trying to do. Like the gods aren't going to get mad that you didn't do it the right way because they're looking at
Exactly.
the intent, not what you're doing.
And that's a such it's such a simple lesson, but it's something that is so lacking in not just I'm not pointing the finger at modern heathenry, but the modern world. Intent has become irrelevant with so many things nowadays. Um, society, the society around us, it seems that it really wants to categorize people. It really wants to categorize events. It really wants to categorize groups into neat little columns so that if you observe an act that is similar to that kind of group, you just assign them to it. And there's no thought on what the intent, reason, or purpose for any of these actions and or events are. And us in the heathen community, especially the cosplayer side of the heathen community, we run across that often when it comes time to usually using cultural symbols, cultural paints, specific shades, different colors. There's a lot of backlash still present out there about people that see something and then just assign it right away to another column. And I think that's why the heathen community in general has been fighting so hard to reclaim a lot of the labels that have been misused and a lot of the terms. Um, and that's why this stuff matters. That's why intent is so important. You can't look at somebody who's saying that they're reading about Asatru, and that is what we're doing tonight. This book is labeled Asatru, and automatically assume that they belong to a specific group of people that practice Asatru with a very, very different defining meaning than what is being explained in this book. It's important that we all take that time and think about the intent and think about the actions and think about why people are doing things before we start labeling them. And these kind of rituals, this kind of process is a good way of retraining yourself to be in the moment and to be thinking about what your intent is because you're putting it out there. And when you start focusing on your intent, it's going to be a lot easier to see the intent of others because it's something that you've opened your eye to. It is part of that third eye. It is something nonverbal that you can see in somebody. You can tell when it's the same as okay, watching a cast member on Vikings perform a ritual is going to feel completely different than watching somebody that actually does it in life perform their version of that same ritual. The intent is completely different. One is artificial, one is a show. It's for
Yeah, one's for
entertainment
entertainment.
purposes. And the other one is deeply spiritual and carries untold meaning from the person that's doing it that's probably been affected by lifetimes of experience. And I can't argue it. Critical thinking, living in the moment, and looking at the living world because it affects everything. Don't look at the universe on how it affects you only, because you're just part of it. You are a part of that living. You're a part of that sphere. You're a part of that rotation. It's fluid.
No, I
It'll it'll
100% agree.
it'll change your outlook completely.
Like, and I love how when she goes into the writing in your own rituals section here, how she does talk about the whole clergy aspect of it, where the question is asked, do heathens e- even need clergy? And it talks about how in many other faiths, clergy are the ones who construct, write, and perform religious rituals or tend to holy places and even assign the churches, where heathenry, on the other hand, is primarily home and community based. So it's like you're usually doing these things in your home or among you and in your community. Excuse me. So I definitely like how she does address that. Um, there, we don't necessarily have clergy. There are some that are clergy, but you don't have to be clergy in order to do these things. And she talks about the aspect that eventually you will have to do these things at some point or another. You know, you're going to be called upon at some point to do one of these things. So it's like, and there is, I know they do talk about the fact that there are a couple of groups that do teach these things, but there is no actual like study place to go or any institution that like just teaches it.
Yeah, there's no embedded structure or title. Um, that is one of the fundamental differences between Norse paganisms and modern monotheism. Again, and it is one point that I do wish that the author would have kind of touched on a little bit more that she didn't, but I kind of understand why she didn't, is when you think about clergy, when you think about organized religion in the way that we all do, we all most likely had a very similar picture. It's a very structured group. It is a very structured group of rules and rituals and things that have to be done a specific way. Heathenry is, in its definition, completely different from that. There are different groups of pagans and heathens that do practice with some sort of spiritual leader. Some use Volva, some use Gothi. Some of them structure themselves in their own clans and or groups very differently than others. But there is no set level. There is not a task that has to be completed to become one of these things. And the one thing that I felt that the author could have touched on, but again, I understand that she didn't, was that the church itself was not just based on a group in charge of religion. When the church swept across Europe, it did so as a political power, as a powerhouse in itself. It held influence. It made decisions for the people, for the masses. It was a decision making entity. That is going, something with that kind of capability and that kind of structure is completely different than the idealism that you would look at as a spiritual leader for a Norse pagan community. Again, unless your goal was something different, to look at clergy in general, that term needs to be broken down a lot more thorough, because before it can be compared to Norse paganism in a way, because of that control point, in my point of view, anyway.
No, I totally agree, and I like how she lays out when talking about writing your own rituals. She gives you kind of a list of things to prepare yourself. Um, First off, you need to know your audience. Like you need to know, is it going to be just a close group of friends where it can be more loosely spoken, um, because you all kind of talk on a regular basis and they know what you're talking about, or is it going to be a little bit of a larger venue where you may perhaps have not only heathens but non-heathens, so you may have to be more descriptive about how you're going about it. So that's what she means. She's talking about when she's talking about know your audience. And then she says, secondly, you need to ask yourself how many people are coming, which we were kind of talking about right now, right then. Is it a small or a large group? And also, is there going to be younger children, infants, because those are going to detach from what's going on, or you may have to set up a group for the children so that it doesn't interrupt the part of the ceremony that the adults are doing. Um, Third, you need to consider where you're holding the ritual, if it's going to be, like we said, in the living room, or is it going to be outdoors, or is it going to be at a festival or a venue? Um, and then also how long the ritual is going to take. So, because there's a variance in how long they can be. You don't want to be too short because anything under 15 minutes, is kind of not like devoting yourself to what you're doing and is a little bit of a disappointment. But then between anything up to like an hour and a half, after that, it's just people start getting antsy, looking at their watches, wondering when this is going to be done, type thing and everything. So it's definitely, knowing who your audience is, if it's mixed or not, and all that stuff, you guys. And then also having all tools present that you're going to use when performing the rituals. So you're not having to stop the ritual to go get it. So it's having everything there prepared and ready to go. So it's just, I really like how she broke it down like that.
Yeah, they're not always going to go perfectly. You guys saw at the beginning of our episode tonight, when Loki does step in, things can go sideways. So being as prepared as you can when you do get ready to perform one of these is your best bet. Making sure you have all the stuff that you need, and have a little bit of understanding in yourself. If you mess up, that's okay. If you make a mistake, that's okay. It's part of the path. Nobody starts it knowing how to do anything. So take your time and give yourself room to make some mistakes.
Right. Red and myself were talking about in the pre show, we were talking about a specific paragraph in this reading that just reminds us of how we even just do the show. How when we have the pre-show, we don't script anything. We just kind of get have a real brief discussion about how we want to take it on, and then we don't even know who's going to take on what or how it's going to go. We just go with however we interact with each other while we're talking about it. We're just basically going back and forth with our points of view. But I really do love that because like this paragraph really reminded me of just our whole setup and how we do the show. Is it says remember that no plan services first contact, not one. Inevitably, the ritual you wrote, as a sublime and holy as it may be on the page, will develop a life of its own as you perform it as your audience and your audience interacts with it. Keep a sense of humor. When small things do go awry, do not panic, but just give a bit of a wry smile and move on. Obviously, if things go so horribly that the ritual breaks down, it is better to just end it right then and there. Just remember that things will happen, unexpected things, and you might as well accept that right from the start. Because we've had many nights where Monday night, when we were on together, all of a sudden in the middle of the show, we both got booted to our own separate pages. And we had to come together because we just out of nowhere, he thought I got booted. I thought he got booted, and we were both still online. We just weren't in the same room anymore.
Yeah, yeah. You never know what's going to happen, and remember that when, like she said, when you write something down, when you plan, and most intent gets put into the writing stage for people. It's usually when they're thinking the most about it. When people get to doing, it's when they start worrying on the little minute things, making sure that things are sitting right and placed right, that kind of stuff. When you do write one of these plans out and you go to execute it, you can get it done the exact way you want it 100 times. And then the one time you have people join you, the weather's different, or it's rained, or like if you do this kind of stuff outside, and you have to change things. It all of a sudden snows. Your actual capabilities to perform this ritual have changed. You got to be able to roll with it a little bit and be okay when it doesn't work out. If you got to cancel a ritual because you know it's not going to succeed, there's no dishonor in that. If you sit down and you think this probably isn't going to work right now, having that foresight to be like, okay, well, let's try this again. If you sit down and you think this probably isn't going to work right now, having that foresight to be like, okay, well, let's try this again on another day. Let's try this again when you sit down and you think this probably isn't going to work right now. Having that foresight to be like, okay, well, let's try this again on another day. Let's try this again when we have this for sure. That's wisdom. That's foresight. That's being able to look at a situation and respect it so much that you want to protect its integrity to you, what you wrote, what you wanted to do. So yeah, take your time with it. And again, give yourself a break because you're never going to get it perfect all the time.
Well, and I know there's been times with Red and myself where, we talk to each other because we usually don't talk to each other about the chapter till an hour before we start. And we just do a brief talk before, and then we get ready and we come out and we do the show. And there's been many nights like we get on that call together and we're like, how are we even going to talk about this chapter?
Yeah, tonight was one of those.
And it just, but every time that we do that though, and we're not even sure how we're going to go into this, it always seems to work out.
Yeah, and it's the intent. Our 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 intent when we come in here, guys, is not to say a specific thing or pass on a specific bit of knowledge because it's not our knowledge. Our goal is to put on a place where you and us and all of us can come together and learn together. That's the goal. So even on these nights where we can't be very specific or very acute to reading specific passages, we can still talk about the fundamentals. We can still and talking about the fundamentals never gets old when there's something that you value. And
Right, and it also gives us the capability to, like, on nights like tonight when we can't talk specifically about a lot of stuff, that we can just connect it with some of our own experiences that we've had, since we
yep,
started this book, and just relate it to experiences that we've had throughout the show with the book and everything, and just pass on things that have happened with you guys and how we felt, and you know remember some things that happened in past episodes and go, we've had some good times.
yep.
It's been a fun journey so far.
Yeah. Again, heading towards the end of this book now, I when we both started this, we had an idea of what it could be. We never thought it was going to be this much fun to hang out and do this with you guys. Like it's the level of which we are all learning and experiencing and the bonds that are being made. And I have to say that is my favorite thing. There's nothing I like more than seeing two people start getting to know each other in the general in here, and then all of a sudden they're doing videos together and they're meeting and they're playing games together and they're posing these kind of questions to each other, and that's how this community is going to become as strong as I see it becoming, and it's really fucking cool to be a part of that.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's like just seeing everything going on in the community lately, seeing how many new people have been showing up and we've been meeting in the community, even when we're not doing Norse Talk and we're just doing our red rooms, or we're doing painting nights, or we're just doing solo lives. Seeing some of the new people that have been jumping in and jumping into the boxes, that some of them we didn't even know were out there, but then others are people we've been following that we never thought they would end up on our page.
So that being said, I don't have much more to cover or to say about this particular chapter. So
Yeah, like I said, like the rest of this part of the chapter is basically giving you the exact layout to do it, to do a blot or a ritual, and then it goes into specific blots for specific deities and everything like that. So those are very informational parts of this chapter that you guys should really make sure that you don't miss. I know I'm going to be reading them more than once. I'm going to be taking notes. There's going to be some that I'm going to want to take note of more than others, but it's definitely a good portion of the chapter, especially for new people that have never done one and are trying to learn how. Um, it's great for them, but then it's also great for the people that are doing them because maybe they can take something out of it, and maybe they'll like something that was a little different that they weren't doing and want to add it to it. Not completely change theirs, but maybe add a little bit to it. But other than that, I think we have covered this chapter the best that we can tonight, you guys. Once again, as always, it's been an amazing night with all of you. I can't wait to hit the Q&A section and hear what people have to say, any questions people have, experiences they had with this chapter when they were reading it, or just anything about the Norse and Norse talk in general, you guys. Everybody's welcome. Can't wait to see everybody there. Anything else, Red, before we sign off?
No, I got nothing else. Again, guys, if you're not in the Discord, please jump in the Discord. That is where as much activity as we get in here during these episodes, there is just as much, if not more, in the community in the Discord all the time. It is an easy way if you do have a question to get a really quick answer. If you do have a thought, the Discord is kind of the community hub that we're using right now. So please, guys, if you're not in there, jump in that Discord. Again, I know we're coming out of the holidays, but you guys remember that we bring Norse Talk to you. I don't even know the way to say this. No, I've completely lost track of what I was going to say. I apologize.
What he's trying to say is it's not a me them thing. It's not a him thing. It's not a you thing. It's a we thing. And we can't do this without each and every one of you. You guys are so amazing.
Oh, shit. Are we cut now?
Not yet. Make sure you guys, if you're not following us on YouTube, go follow us on YouTube. Hit that subscribe and that like button, you guys. And as always, stay amazing, stay creating, and be awesome. We'll see you in the Q&A.